Hello, this is Professor Christina DeSario at State College of Florida, and welcome to my lecture on coronary circulation. As we know, the heart is a muscular pump, and it is constantly pumping blood throughout the body. It either goes out to pulmonary circulation, so out to the lungs, or out through the aorta to systemic circulation to the rest of the body. Now, with all of this pumping action happening with the heart all of the time, you can imagine that the heart muscle itself needs to be supplied with a constant oxygen-rich supply of blood, right? So we have, actually, let me show you here. We have all of these vessels going throughout the heart. And all of these vessels will do two things. The arteries, called coronary arteries, will supply the myocardium, or the heart muscle, with oxygen-rich blood. But as we know, the cells in the muscle tissue need to make energy, so they use that oxygen to make ATP. And in the process, they give off carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is a waste product, and so we need to get rid, or we need to take that carbon dioxide away from that tissue, away from those cells. We do that through these veins, okay? And these are the cardiac veins. So let's talk about these, all right? First, we know that from the left ventricle here, we will pump oxygen-rich blood throughout the body. Right? It goes from this left ventricle inside systole, okay, that's the contraction, okay? So we have a ventricular systole occurs. It forces that blood up through this guy right here, right? This is our aortic, this is our aortic semilunar valve. And that connects here to the aorta. So we know that on the back side of this valve, we have these little cups. And during systole, it's going to push that blood up, through this valve. But during diastole, right, we have this part here that kind of goes against gravity, right? So this goes kind of straight up. So the blood that's still in here when this ventricle relaxes during diastole, that blood will fall back down here. And as it falls back down with these little cups here on the inside, they'll catch it. So it will pull up just a little bit. And as it pulls up, we have these arteries coming right off of the base of the aorta. We can't see the left one here because it's covered by the pulmonary trunk. But we have these arteries coming off the base of the aorta, and these are how we're going to bring that blood from the ascending aorta to the heart. So like I said, it branches. We have the right coronary artery, and that's going to wrap around. And then we have the left coronary artery. Welcome to my assistant, Unity. She'll be helping me today. So the left coronary artery actually goes under here, but we can't see it. It's only a few centimeters long, and we can see just the very end of it here before it branches. And it'll branch right here and then go off over here, okay? So let's follow both sides around the heart, okay? So like I said, we have the right coronary artery here. The right coronary artery, we're gonna follow this down. We're not gonna name this branch right here for the sake of the class, all right? But as we come down here, we see this second branch. This is the marginal branch. You can also call it the marginal artery, but it's really a branch of arteries. And you can see that that's supplying the anterior and sort of inferior portions near the apex of the heart, okay? Again, this is the right marginal artery. We also call this the acute marginal artery. We say that because typically, now this model doesn't show it very well, but typically there will be a bit of an acute angle here, so less than 90 degrees. So we call it the acute marginal artery. If we keep following this around, it's still our right coronary artery. And then here, this is our posterior interventricular artery. Okay, so that's all we need to know for the right side of the arteries. Again, coming off the base of the aorta, we have the right coronary artery, the right marginal branch, keep following the right coronary artery around, and the posterior interventricular branch, or posterior interventricular artery. Either one is okay. Now, a quick side note on this is we have something called coronary dominance. And what that means is we're talking about which artery, the posterior interventricular branch is connected to. Now, typically, there's a right dominance. 60 to 80% of the time, we're right dominant, meaning that this posterior interventricular artery or branch is attached to or coming off of the right coronary artery, okay? Sometimes, much less frequently, but sometimes it can actually come off of the left coronary artery. Okay, again, that happens much less frequently. We also have something called shared dominance, and that's very, very rare, but it does happen. And that's when the right and left coronary arteries kind of connect back here, and then the posterior interventricular branch is coming down off of sort of both of them. Okay? Now, let's talk about the left coronary artery. We said that it just peaks out right here, and then it branches. We have the anterior interventricular artery, or anterior interventricular branch, coming down the anterior portion of the heart and also getting down to the inferior portion. Actually, let me make a quick note here as well. Something to note here is that these are terminal, meaning that they end down here, right? Meaning that if you get a clot in the artery somewhere up here, you can get something called a myocardial infarction. And what that means is that you get a blockage here, or a clot, that stops the blood from supplying this lower portion of the heart or wherever it's blocked. When that happens, that can potentially lead to death. It can be very serious because, like I said, it's very important that we be able to supply the heart muscle itself with oxygen so it can do its function, okay? Now, so we said the left coronary artery branched into the anterior interventricular artery, or anterior interventricular branch. And then we come around here and we have something called the circumflex artery. We also have this guy here, and this is our left marginal branch, or left marginal artery. It's also sometimes called the obtuse marginal branch or obtuse marginal artery because this forms an obtuse angle. Okay, and that's it for the arteries. So a quick recap. We have, coming off the base of the aorta, we have the right coronary artery and the left coronary artery. Follow the right coronary artery around, we have the right marginal branch, and then we have the posterior interventricular branch. Following this guy around to the left, we have the left coronary artery, the anterior interventricular artery or branch, circumflex artery, following the sulcus around, and the left marginal branch or left obtuse marginal branch. Now let's talk about the veins. The veins will start, actually let's start in the back, and I'm going to point this guy out to you. Okay, you see this big kind of fat part right here? All right, so all these veins are picking up that oxygen poor blood, okay? We're picking up that carbon dioxide and bringing this oxygen poor blood back here. This is called our coronary sinus, okay? and that's a vein, right? And that coronary sinus will dump that blood into the right atrium, because as we know, the right atrium collects oxygen-poor blood. It receives that blood from multiple other veins. So let's talk about those. We'll start at the front and work our way around to the left and to the right. So this guy here, okay, this is our great vein. The great vein starts in the anterior portion of the heart, and we follow it all the way around until it dumps right into the coronary sinus. Okay, so that's the great vein. This vein here is our inferior cardiac vein of the left ventricle. Inferior cardiac vein of the left ventricle. And you can see that it kind of merges right where the cardiac vein dumps into the coronary sinus. And so it's right there at that junction. Coming around the other side, over here by our marginal artery, or our right marginal branch, we have the anterior cardiac vein. This is our anterior cardiac vein. This vein here, which we feed into, that's following right along the sulcus here, is the small vein, the small cardiac vein. Okay, and you can see that the small cardiac vein also dumps right into our coronary sinus. And then finally, we have our, we call this the median vein, the median cardiac vein. You could also call this the posterior interventricular vein. Okay, that's it for our coronary circulation. Happy studying.